Hey there, everybody. So, hope everybody's doing good. We're going to do some unwrapping and some texture stuff today and just kind of play around with some things. So, the files I'm going to be using you can grab from Moodle. Specifically, I'm going to use my version of the Final Sci-Fi set that was from the book as well as your class assignment. And I've also got this Maya file, this sample objects UV unwrap. So I've got both those downloaded. And let's see, I'm done with Chrome. And so I've got them downloaded here in my downloads. I'm going to go ahead and make a new folder here because I'm going to be creating several things. So I'm going to call this, I guess I'll call this sci-fi example. And this is where I'll start saving some things. And let's go ahead and move this off here. So first thing, here's my Photoshop from what we did. So I've got everything grouped off and can just, can kind of switch back and forth, whatever I want. Turn my floor on, my wall, the ceiling that I did, my vent thing, all these. I could apply an overlay to it, adjust the color of my overlay some if I, want to kind of, blue rusted thing or, whatever it is I'm wanting to do. Okay, so anyway, there's my basic layout. So let's get into Maya and let's kind of, the book doesn't really cover Maya at all. So, quick few things that we need to know about Maya. Here's the basic interface. You can see my scene is loaded in. To rotate in your scene, hold down the Alt key and the left mouse button, and you can rotate. To pan in your scene, hold down the Alt key and the middle mouse button, and you can pan. And to zoom in and out, you can use your mouse wheel, or you can hold Alt and the right mouse button if you kind of want a more incremental zoom. The mouse wheel can be kind of jumpy, and this can be a little bit smoother. The Alt right mouse button a little bit smoother. Okay, to select objects, you can just click on them, like so. And over here on this side, in our attribute panel, we will see various things about these objects. That is essentially what we need to know about Maya right now. Keep in mind this is not a modeling class, so how these were made, how I can change these, edit these, that's not at all the point of this class. One thing to kind of move forward as we start working on building some textures, you can see this black side of that one right there. If I Alt left mouse button to tumble around, you can see I've got a black side here and a black side here, and down here there's a black side as well. What that black side is you can think of that as the inverse normal side. That is the side that is not visible. And by not visible, I don't mean that this is the direction I'm looking from. I literally mean that if we were to put this in a game and look at it from this direction, we would not see this side at all. It would be invisible, transparent. What's going on, the way that things are rendered, is that surfaces, such as this, have a normal. And the normal is the direction that light will bounce off of. Okay? So if light is coming at this object, this one right here, its normal is defined as a perpendicular line from this surface, perpendicular 90 degrees. So in this case, we can think of the normal as being this blue line right here, which is the z-axis. Does that mean the normal is always the z-axis? Well, no, apparently not. You can look at this object, and you can see, for instance, the normal here would be on the y, the normal on this top one would be the negative y, and the normal here would be the z. For those individual pieces. Now, it might turn out that those individual pieces are rotated. We're not going to worry about that. So the normal is the side that light will reflect from. So if I have a light ray coming at this surface, it will bounce off this surface and reflect back along the normal. If I'm on the other side of this black side, and my light ray hits this, it will also reflect off the normal side, which means it will go that way. Okay? Now if my camera is over here somewhere, my camera never sees the light ray. It never returns. If light does not go into the camera, or does not go into your eye, you don't see it. So that's how this becomes transparent, invisible, based on the normal. Now I'm pointing that out because as we texture things, there's times that we will have, planes like this where we have this inverse normal side back there. And, if we tumble around, you might be like, well, I can't see it back here. Yeah, you're not supposed to. So, that's okay. Now, we can create, double-sided materials, and we won't worry about that just yet, but there's a lot of ways to work around that. Now, on an object like this cube over here, Alt middle mouse button to pan, this cube, all the inverse normals are going inside the cube. So, you tumble around this, you're going to be able to see all of it because the opposite of each one of these planes normal is actually going inside the cube. So that will never be invisible unless I make an alpha mask for it in my texture set, which is a different problem. We're not ready for that yet. Okay, Alt middle mouse button to pan. So back here to our plane, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to start unwrapping this. This one is going to be fairly straightforward. Didn't mean to do that. Alt middle mouse button. This one is just going to be straightforward. We'll just go ahead and unwrap this plane object here. So to unwrap something, go ahead and go to UV up here at the top and bring up your UV editor. This UV editor shows our current UV template, our current unwrap. Ideally, we want everything to be in this first quadrant right here, this lighter gray area. That's where we're going to want to put all of our things as we unwrap it and make them fit in here somehow or other. Buttons up here will add as the semester goes on. So we don't need to go through and flash memorize everything up here. We'll just do little pieces at a time. So this is my UV editor. Now I'm going to go ahead and come back over here and go back up to UV, and I have several types of projections. Now a projection is where I'm taking this form, this 3D object, and I'm projecting it down to a 2D shape. So like a planar projection is going to project this thing down to a single plane or square. Spherical is ideally, so planar projection is best used for boxes, walls, planes, square, that kind of things. A spherical projection map is intended to be used for round spherical objects, and it's going to try to project that round form into a shape, two-dimensional shape that we can easily work with. Cylindrical is intended to project from cylindrical objects and turn that into something that we can work with. So these become major tools that we can use. Another one available is this one right up here, this automatic, and this will go through and it will just automatically try to unwrap things, and that becomes a starting point. One thing about all of these is that none of these is your one-stop, I'm done with my texture set kind of thing. These become your starting points, and then we manipulate our texture, our unwrap, over here in our editor. And then once we have this all set over here, we put it in Photoshop and actually make our textures. So to get started, I'm going to go ahead and start with this plane right here. So I'll just go up here to my UV, and I'm going to go ahead and do a planar projection. And it does one of these things. Okay, so it's got something there. I've got something over here. Now what I want to do is I really want to see how my UV unwrap looks as far as is there stretching or skewing on it. And the best way to do this, well, the easiest way at the moment, is to simply, in our UV editor, turn on this checker box thing right here. It's below the magnet next to RGB. We'll turn that on, and we can now see our checker pattern out here. What we really want is we want this checker pattern to look like a checkerboard. We want nice, even squares, right? And currently we have this horrendously skewed thing. Now before we try doing anything over here to fix this, we're going to take a look at our projection settings. So if we go back to UV, come down here to our planar projection, and click this box, which will bring up our tool settings or our options, we have some options here. The thing I want you to notice here is that we can project from any one of these axes. So by default it projected on the x-axis. The x-axis is this red one. Okay, it's going left and right. What that means is that it basically put a camera right here and created a plane projection of this. Well, what is that? Well, it's a straight line. Okay, What do we have over here? Well, we seen this orange thing. That is my unwrap right there. I have a straight line. Okay, so I could change this to project from the Y. Well, that's going to be that green axis up there. What's that going to do? Well, it's going to put basically a camera up here, and it's going to project that. So you can see that's going to make a line. If I go to the Z axis, which is the blue one right there, and come down here, you can see that is going to put a camera out here, and that's going to project, and I'm going to get this shape. So this is where we start seeing how form and shape go together. If this is my form right here, the shape is going to be this straight line. Whereas if this is my form, there we go. So I'll do a Z-axis, hit project, and notice how nice and tight those are. So this projection map came through, and it gave me this nice, and it's using up my whole UV area that I have right there. These these black things, these are my bounding box. We don't really need to worry about that right now. And I'm using my whole texture, or my whole area in this first quadrant. So we've got this object unwrapped. So let's go ahead and save this out as a template, bring it into Photoshop, and then apply texture to it and get it back into here, and that'll wrap up this first video. So to put this out into a image that I can bring in Photoshop, I'm going to go with polygons, come down here to the bottom, UV snapshot. Now I'm in the UV editor here. Polygons, UV snapshot. First thing I want to do is I want to give it a location and a name. If you're using a Maya project structure, you can do that. I tend not to use those structures. I know it's a bad habit, but it's what I do. So I want to go to my downloads, which is there. Go to this folder I just created, and I'm going to do a plain, I'm going to call it plain underscore template. So this way I will always have this template to come back to, and I'm going to name it basically what object it is I'm working on out there. My files of type is going to be from my tool settings, so I'll go ahead and save that. My size, this is going to be my image resolution, so I'm going to go ahead and crank this up to 1024. Now I have keep aspect ratio on, so that's why my Y went to 1024 as well. I could go 512 if I want. I could go 2048. It's whatever resolution you want. 1024 is going to work well for me. The color value, this is going to define what color. See these orange lines here? This defines what color those orange lines will appear in your template that we export. Generally, it's different colors for different people, how you prefer to see things. Personally, I'm a big green person, okay, for this kind of stuff. So I'm going to set mine to be green. Yeah, like maybe right about there. Looks cool. Maya if is going to be my file format. I'm good. I'm going to hit OK. Now, well, I could scroll down here a little bit. This UV range, this is going to define which range it is here that I'm exporting. We want this to stay at this default for right now. So we'll go ahead and do an OK. And that has exported that out. I'm actually done with my UV editor. I'm going to close it. If I ever need to come back into it, I can just go with UV editor. Okay, there we go. Now, one thing, just to kind of backtrack here a little bit. When we unwrap, we need our thing that we're working on to be in object mode. We can tell we're in object mode. The easiest way is because you're going to see these green lines. If I'm not in object mode, I'm going to see these blue lines, and depending on which sub-object or component I'm in, it will change some other things. For instance, if I'm in vertex mode, I've got the blue lines with red dots for vertices. Edge mode is going to look like that, and then face mode is what I had it in before that. So if you don't have green lines around everything, you just want to press F8 on your keyboard, and now you're in object mode. You need to be in object mode when you unwrap. The only exception to that is if you're only wanting to unwrap a small part of something, in which case you'll just select that one part. For instance, I'm unwrapping a character, and I select the character's arm to do a cylindrical unwrap, for instance. There's times where we will just unwrap portions, just little bits at a time and kind of put it together. But there's other ways to do that as well, particularly if you're doing hard surface modeling, where we can just do an automatic unwrap and start stitching things inside the UV editor. But for what we're doing right now, I want to make sure I'm in object mode. So that was F8. We'll change to object mode. Okay, so let's go to Photoshop. Let's see. Bring this back over here. So in my sci-fi example folder, I have this template if that I just sent out. I'm going to go ahead and drag it up to a new tab inside Photoshop here. And here you can see my template. I'm going to go ahead and rename this layer. I'm going to use caps just because it helps it stand out to me at times. Also, this template is almost always all the way at the top. I'm going to add one more layer to this. So I'll do a new layer. I'm going to put this layer at the bottom, and this is going to be, I'm going to leave it at caps. This is going to be my base. Then I want to fill this layer. So I'll do a Shift F5, or you can go Edit, Fill Image. And I want to fill it with 50% gray because that's my preference. If you want some other color, you want black, use black. And you can see how our grid lines are kind of showing up here. I guess I'll leave this at black for the moment. It's not actually going to matter long term. So as we build textures, basically it's like a coloring book. You color within the lines of your layout, right? Now this particular layout took up this whole area, which is fine. That's cool. Okay, so I want to come up with something to put on here. So I'm going to create a new layer. I'll just leave it layer 1. And I'm going to go over here and let's see, what do I want to put on this thing? I'll pick one of these. I'll just go ahead and grab this wall panel. Let's give it a rust overlay. Let's give it a little bit of blue in that rust overlay. There we go. All right, so now I can't just select this and take it over because I've got all these different layers that are involved in this. So what I'm actually going to do is, let's see. So hold on. I'm mildly curious about something. Yeah, that's not going to do what I want. Okay, so what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to Save As. I'm going to export out that picture I have. So I'm going to go into my sci-fi example folder. I'm going to export it out as a targa because that's my personal preference of what I prefer to use. And I'm going to call this wall. Oops, I don't need my caps anymore. Wall piece, wall tile piece, whatever, whatever I call it. And I'll export that out. 24 bits per channel is going to be just fine. I'll go back into my File Explorer. Here's my wall piece. So I'm going to drag that guy up to another tab. I'm going to end up with a lot of tabs before I'm done. I'll do a Control A. So I'm on my wall piece right here. I'll do a Control A, Control C. So I've got it selected, copied, come over to my plain template. Control V to paste it into this new layer I made. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and hide my template because if I leave it there, those green lines are part of the texture. I don't want that there, so I'm going to hide that. And let's go ahead and save this. I'm going to go File, Save As, and I'm going to save this as a Photoshop file for right now. And I'm going to call this plain set as a Photoshop. I'm going to save that. And I'll say OK. All right, so that's been saved out. And there it is, plain, right? Now, Maya and game engines, they support Photoshop files. So I can use a Photoshop file for a texture, and it will automatically flatten the image. That means it will go through and it will merge all these layers into one. And that's fine for while I'm building this and I'm wanting to iterate through some changes. So that way I can just go into, I don't have to re-export the file every time. But long term, once I'm done with my texture, I need to, in Photoshop, export it out into whatever that final image format is going to be. Notice this plain set right here is 6.1 megs, and just this wall piece alone as the target is 3 megs. So you're talking about a size difference. The Photoshop is twice the size, and as I add more layers, this becomes even larger. So back in Maya now. So we're back in Maya. I've still got this object selected. What I want to do is right-click on it, hold down the mouse button, and you will get this context menu that comes up. I want to scroll all the way down here and I want to assign a new material to this thing. I have a ton of material options. Now for what we're going to do, we're not really going to worry about all our various material options here in Maya because pretty soon we're going to be jumping into Quixel to be doing a lot of stuff there, and then eventually long term all of this stuff comes together into Unity where we further refine and tweak things. So for what I'm going to be doing with Maya, I'm just going to use a default. I'm just going to use a standard Lambert material. Nothing fancy about that at all. Just take that standard Lambert there and go ahead and modify one of its settings. So to find it up over here in my tribute panel here, I'm going to go ahead and use this arrow key and go all the way over until I have a Lambert 2 or Lambert 3 or Lambert 4, whatever it's called, whatever it is on yours. If you go all the way over to the right, you're basically getting to the attributes of the last thing attached to this, done with this. And in this case, it's this material. I'm going to start off by changing the name. Lambert 2 is not a good name. It could be a little confusing, so I'm going to call this plain underscore MAT. Do you have to do underscore MAT? Not necessarily, but this helps it to be, when I'm looking at files later on, it helps differentiate this immediately as a material. The next thing I want to do is I want to apply a color map to this. Right now it has this default gray color, so I want to put a texture on this. So to do that, I'm going to hit this checkerboard pattern next to the color there and select File. Brings me up here. So I want to select the file I want. So I'm going to go to my folder icon right here. Go find my file, which is in my downloads. Sci-fi example, my plane set, open. Okay, you can see it's right there, but it didn't show up out here. By default, Maya does not render textures out here. So to get it to render out here, we'll go over here to our shading tool, shading drop down in our viewport, shading, turn on hardware texturing, and there it is. So now we can see our plane with that texture applied to it. And notice when I come behind, I still have this black. There's no texture there. But this side I have my texture. Okay, and we're off and running. We've got a texture applied to something, and we feel pretty cool and good about that. Okay, so this is part one. Any questions, let me know. Next up, we'll go ahead and kind of take on one of these other ones and make a slightly more complex texture for something. So yeah, any questions, just let me know.